Okay, so today we're going to dive into a story about a broken pipe, a system that was totally stuck, and the community that found a pretty brilliant way to fix it. We're going to see how regular people, when they're armed with the right information, can actually become the key to unlocking a much better future. So our story starts in Fayette County, West Virginia. There's a local waterway there called Smithers Creek, and it became the center of this slow-moving but really serious public health crisis. So back in August of 2022, a massive flood just tears through the area. And we're not talking about some temporary damage here. No, it literally destroyed 7 miles of sewer line. The result? Well, you can probably guess. Raw sewage from a nearby state prison started flowing directly and nonstop into Smithers Creek. Now, you would think a problem this bad would trigger a huge immediate response, right? Well, it didn't. For over a year and a half, the situation just festered. And what it really revealed was a challenge that communities, all over the country can face. And that really gets to the core of the problem here. It wasn't that the community didn't care. It was a classic case of systemic gridlock, where the very processes that are supposed to help became the biggest roadblock. So how exactly was this community trapped? Well, they were basically caught between a totally inadequate temporary fix on one side and this impenetrable wall of bureaucracy on the other. Just look at this timeline for a second. The flood destroys the line in August 2022. Okay, now fast forward all the way to February 2024. That's 18 months later. And the federal funds they needed for a real fix were still stuck. Finally, in April 2024, they approved a temporary chemical Band-Aid. But that's all it was, a Band-Aid on a massive wound. And you can just feel the frustration in this quote from a local official. The holdup wasn't a lack of will, it was federal bureaucracy. The funding was all tangled up in red tape over tiny things like, get this, disputes over volunteer firefighters' timesheets. It was the process, completely getting in the way of progress. So you can really see the trap they were in, right? The community was stuck with this chemical solution, just pouring bleach and sulfur into the lines, which was never, ever meant to be permanent. And at the same time, the real actual solution was just stuck in limbo, waiting for a green light that just was not coming. So, faced with this impossible situation, a local group decided, you know what? We're done waiting for the system to fix itself. They decided to forge their own path forward. And honestly, it's a playbook that any community could learn from. This group, a nonprofit called Smithers and Friends, they came up with this blueprint for action that was, both super simple and incredibly powerful. They figured out that to get the system unstuck, they couldn't just complain. They needed cold, hard, undeniable proof that the situation demanded action, like right now. And their plan was just genius. Okay, so step 1, they launch a citizen science program called Smithers Creek Watch. Step 2, they train regular people, their neighbors, to collect water samples that were scientifically sound. And third, and this right here is the game changer, they operated under something called a QAP, which is basically a set of rules that makes their data so high quality that it becomes legally defensible. It literally cannot be ignored by regulators. So, this is the really crucial part. How does the citizen-collected data become the key that unlocks the whole system? See, it's not just about knowing there's a problem. It's about proving it in a language that the system is forced to listen to. So the most powerful tool in their whole toolkit is the ability to prove something called a Tier 1 violation. Now, under federal law, this is the highest level of alert. It means E. coli, which is a sign of sewage contamination, has been found not just in the creek, but in the actual tap water system. That's a direct, acute risk to human health. And here is the magic number. If a community can prove a Tier 1 violation with that legally defensible data we talked about, the utility is required by law to notify the public within 24 hours. That instantly turns a years-long bureaucratic headache into an hours-long public health emergency, and it forces immediate action, usually a boil water advisory. But that's not the only lever they can pull. Check this out. The state ranks water systems by their viability score. So a healthy system is viable. One that needs some help is marginal. But if a system scores below 40%, it gets officially labeled as failing. Citizen data can provide the hard evidence needed to downgrade a system's status to failing, which, and this is key, automatically moves it to priority 1 for state intervention and repair funds. It literally pushes them right to the front of the line. But okay, let's say they succeed. They get the funding, the main sewer line is finally getting fixed. You think that's the end of the story, right? Well, there's often one last kind of hidden barrier to getting clean, safe water to every single home. It's called the last mile problem. Public utilities can use public money to fix the big pipes under the street, but legally, they're often not allowed to spend that money on private property. What that means is a brand new water main might stop right at your curb, leaving residents who can't afford that last little connection completely stranded. And this is where another brilliant strategy comes into play, one modeled after a program called Dig Deep. It creates this powerful partnership where the public utility fixes the main lines, and a nonprofit partner like Smithers and Friends steps in to handle that crucial final connection from the street to the home. And that's exactly what Smithers and Friends is set up to do. As a nonprofit, they can use private donations to pay for those last-mile repairs on private land. This creates a whole systemic solution that the government, just by itself, simply can't provide. It makes sure nobody gets left behind. So let's just recap this incredible story. The problem was a broken system, both physically and in terms of bureaucracy. The key to unlocking it wasn't just waiting around. It was creating legally defensible data that forced the system to act. And the final solution? A smart, community-led nonprofit that could step in and fill the gaps the government couldn't. You know, this story from Fayette County is so much more than just one isolated success. It's a blueprint. It shows that when communities are armed with credible, verifiable information, they have the power to fix even the most broken systems. So what problems in your own backyard are just sitting there, waiting for the right data to finally get solved? The real question is, are you ready to go find them?